Hey guys, and today I'm going to show how to install Windows XP on VirtualBox. There are some old softwares or old games which do not run very well on Windows 10 or Windows 8 or 7, and in that case we would want to install Windows XP so that we can play those games. But installing Windows XP on your machine is not a good idea because it is an outdated operating system and Windows has already cut all of the support for Windows XP. So it is better if we install Windows XP on VirtualBox so that we can use it only when we want it. So I'm going to show how to install VirtualBox and then how to install Windows XP on it. If you have already downloaded and installed VirtualBox, you can just skip ahead this video and get to the part where I'm installing the Windows XP. So now let me just download the VirtualBox first. Let it download completely. Once the download has completed, click on it and run the installer. Click next. Change the settings if you know what you are doing, or if you don't know, just click on next and let it do its thing. And the installation will begin. Click on finish. Then this Oracle VM VirtualBox Manager will open up. Click on new. Then give any name that you want to give, and in version select Windows XP 32-bit. If you have 64-bit edition of this Windows XP, select 64. If you have a 64-bit edition of this Windows XP and you want to install this 64-bit, then you have to make sure that your CPU is 64-bit. And then the second thing is that you need to enable this hardware virtualization, and you can enable that in the BIOS setup. And if you have an Intel 64-bit processor, then you need to make sure that VTX, that is the Intel virtualization technology, and VTD are both enabled. And if you have a AMD 64-bit processor, then make sure that AMD SVM, that is secure virtual machine, is enabled. Give it any name that you want to give, then click on next. Now it is asking about the memory size. This is the amount of RAM that you are going to share between the host and the guest machine. Host machine is your machine on which you are working, and the guest machine is going to be the operating system that you are installing on this VirtualBox. If you have a lot of RAM installed on your machine, then you can share fairly a large part of it without having any problem. If you have limited RAM installed on your machine, then make sure that you do not share a large part of that RAM because it can hamper the working of your computer and it may lead to making your computer unresponsive. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I'm going to share 3 gigabytes of RAM, and I think 3 gigabytes of RAM is sufficient for Windows XP. Then select this middle one, create a virtual hard disk. Then we have these three types of hard disk. Select the VirtualBox disk image, that is the VDI. Next, then you can give a name to this, how much memory you are willing to allocate to this virtual hard disk. And I think 10 gigabytes of hard disk memory is enough to run Windows XP. Or let's say 20 gigabytes. This is more than enough. Then you can browse through your computer to select any other directory where you want to save this virtual hard disk. Then click on create. Now right click on this XP and select settings. Now on this vertical tab, select storage. Then next to this controller ID, there is a small icon, that compact disk icon, CD icon with a plus sign on it. Click on it. We need to add an optical drive which contains the backup of this Windows XP. So click on choose disk. Then browse to the backup of this Windows XP. It is better if you have a backup somewhere on your computer instead of using a compact disk or a DVD, because that will slow down the installation process. So anyway, select the backup file, then click OK. Okay, now click on start. This will boot the virtual drive. You can see the Windows setup. Maximize the window. Let me just increase the scale factor to make it more readable. And now we have three options that either we can continue or repair or quit. We don't have any operating system to repair. We cannot quit. So hit enter. Okay, this is the Windows XP licensing agreement. If you have time, you can just go through it and read all of the agreements. Then hit F8 to accept it. Then we have this partition list and we have just one unpartitioned space. We don't have any partition as of now. Hit C because C is for the create partition. Now if you are planning to create multiple partitions, then you can choose a lower size for this one so that you have some unpartitioned space left which you can use to create some more partition. But I am willing to create just one partition, so I'm going to use the maximum size for this partition, which is 20466. Then hit enter. Enter is to create. And now you can see that we have this raw partition, which is the C drive now, and we need to install the Windows XP on this. Hit install, that is hit enter. Okay, now this is asking if we want to format the partition using the NTFS file system or the FAT file system. So NTFS is the newer version and it is fast and more secure than the FAT file system. So it is better to use NTFS system because FAT system has some limitations. It was developed in 1977. It is very old. It does not have built-in security and recoverability options, and even file compression is not possible. The maximum size of any file is 4 gigabytes. So which means you cannot have any file which is more than 4 gigabyte in size. There are many more limitations of this file system. So now let's just format the partition using NTFS file system quick. So when we choose to run a full format on a volume or a partition, files are removed from the volume that we are formatting and the hard disk is also scanned for bad sectors. But when we choose to run a quick format on a volume or a partition, then format removes the files from the partition, but it does not scan the disk for bad sectors. So this is the basic difference between these two types of format. We have this first dialog box, that is Windows XP Professional Setup, Regional and Language options. So I am fine with this English, United States. The US keyboard layout is also fine for me. Click on next. Enter the name and the organization. Then enter the product key that you have received while purchasing Windows XP. Enter it and then click on next. Then we have this computer name. Then if you want to keep any administrator password, you can keep it here. Then if you want to change the date and time, you can do that from here. Then we have this time zone. Then click on next. Then let the Windows choose the typical settings and you can just click on next. Click on OK. Then to continue, click next. Help protect my PC by turning on automatic updates now. Click on next and checking your internet connectivity. You can skip this part for now because we are going to take care of the internet or the networking later. If you want to register with the Microsoft, you can go ahead and click on next. then create users. Okay, then finish, and the Windows will boot up and you have your desktop now.